Hello everyone, how's it going? I'm WoWcrendor and welcome back to another video. I made a video like this a few months ago, and it was about the WoW subscription loss. And it's pretty popular. And I think videos like that are popular because everybody has in their mind a way they can change the game, or they want the game to change. And it becomes very opinionated and emotional. And so I decided I wanted to write down what I think I would change about the game. And I didn't want to go over the top. I didn't want it to be like my fans ran WoW videos where the ideas are just like crazy, but they're crazy for a reason. It's kind of just being over dramatic. And I love reading the forum posts and all these things where people just say, these are the ideas I have, and I think it's fun to do that, but at the same time you want to be understanding of the developers, because there's a lot of work and behind the scenes that goes into actually creating the game and the content, and I think people overlook that part and they don't see it as a kind of like a time clock where they feel like Blizzard could just be like, alright, we're going to scrap all our thing and start working on this. Like, Blizzard is very likely, you know, already, like, deep into the next expansion and probably planning the one after that. And, you know, a lot of these ideas are already, you know, for example, they're like, oh, for the next patch we need this. But Blizzard, they've probably already put a lot of work into the next patch. And if they were to change that, they would have to go back and scrap a bunch of stuff. So, I mean, there's so many behind the scenes things that we don't know about, but people, I think, like to blame them for that anyway. Like, oh, whatever. So let's start. Overall, I think faster content and revisiting old content would be two of my biggest overall changes I would want to make to the game. So, faster content, because obviously when you see those big subscription spikes and new players coming in or old players resubscribing, it's usually because there's new content. Whether it be a patch or an expansion or just anything that's going to give you new content, that's when people return. And Blizzard has said they want to make content faster and get it out quickly. However, I believe it's far easier said than done. A lot of people are like, oh, they're slacking off, they're lazy. They very well may be slacking off or lazy, but they also may be working pretty hard and just not getting it out fast enough. It could be inefficiency, you know, it could be a lot of reasons, but, you know, we don't know. We don't sit there and watch them work. We don't have any behind the scenes information. I think that's why a lot of people get upset over the issue, is because we don't know. You know, we don't see them like being like, we could work on the thing, but we're gonna go swimming. Like, I don't know. We don't know. And I think if we understood their process of how they created things and their work, I think it'd be cool if they made a video showing us how they work on a daily basis and what they do. I'm sure there's something out there that they've already done like that, but I think it would be a nice video to put on their channel and be like, hey, look, this is our daily process and why it takes so long to create things. And of course there'd still be people being like, because there's always people complaining, but I don't know. Faster content is always just a way to, you know, kind of just win over everybody, because you're creating new stuff a lot quick. Like, you're pumping out content. And revisiting old content, I think, would be cool. And it doesn't even have to be some big, gigantic, like, event, like, we're gonna go back to the Burning Crusade, and blah. But I think it'd be cool if you added, like, 1 or 2 quests every, like, patch or something, you know, maybe like you go back to Outland and there's 2 new quests and they're like scaled to your level, and they're like, hey, you know, come back and do a thing for us. It doesn't even have to relate to Illidan, doesn't have to relate to the Burning Legion. It could just be for whatever. But it's new, it's fun, and it seems like they kind of just toss aside their content that they've created after 6 months to a year, because they're like, all right, let's move on. But I think if you revisited the old content, it would be kind of a nostalgic trip, and it would also be pretty fun. It doesn't have to be a giant ordeal, is what I'm saying. It could just be a nice little, like, hey, remember this? Go back and check it out. And they'd be like, wow. Like Wrath of the Lich King, maybe the Tusker need your help again. Just stuff like that. But overall, I think WoW, no matter what you do, it's going to be a game that a lot of people take breaks between quite often. And constant updates are going to be one of the biggest things that change that keep people coming back and not taking breaks. I know even when I first started playing WoW, I took a lot of breaks. Even just in vanilla WoW, when I was like, wow, this game is amazing. I probably took like 30 or 40 breaks from the game because I was just like, I'm going to go do something else because I'm bored now. I think a lot of people forget how many breaks they took in the game. But it is what it is. So let's get more specific now. So let's move to PvE. PvE, I would like to reward exploration, which they've done. And I really like the way they've done it. I liked how you can now see the treasures. For example, let me go over here. There's Draenor. You can see you got all the treasures everywhere. I think everybody knows about the treasures, but I like the way they've done that. I like the way they've done that, and I hope they keep doing that, because I really like being rewarded for exploring. And I always have my idea where I'm like, put a bunch of cool stuff in the old zones. For example, if I was flying over here right now and I look down, there's just like a little like treasure thing right there. It'd be like, whoa, cool. Or like this tree had treasure in it, just stuff like that. And I think that would be a way to just spice up the old world again. A lot of my ideas revolve around spicing up the old world, because I feel like there's just so much work they've put into this. Like, look, they've redone all this. In Cataclysm, they did so much, and then it's just like, well, that was alright, people are done with that unless you're leveling, in which most people just ignore leveling the, zone way and just power instances. And I think it would just be nice to keep the old content a bit fresh. Doesn't have to be like, this is the thing you're gonna do, but so questing is another big one, and I was trying to figure out what could make questing a bit more fun. I think higher quality daily quests. I know right now people used to complain about daily quests. I used to complain about daily quests, but now with garrisons, I almost feel like daily quests are more fun. And I don't mean like the go collect 8 things and come back to me type daily quests. I mean like a cool daily quest rotation. For example, what if your daily quest was like Dark Moon Fair quests and you got cool rewards for it? Like just fun daily quests. However, I think the biggest issue, myself included with this, is I'm like, just do this generic thing, and you don't really provide specific details. So for that one, like that came into my mind, so I decided to say it. But also, it may be extremely dumb. So that's the thing. Class quests. I think class quests should be brought back. I love doing my priest quests, and I know people did the hunter quests for the bow. They don't even have to be for like amazing items, but I think it'd just be fun to have a class specific quests for just all the classes. And they scrapped the idea a while back, but I feel like there has to be something that could help you learn more about your class in addition to getting something for doing the quests. And it doesn't even have to be a giant chain for your quests. It could just be a couple quests and like, well, you're done. But I think it'd be fun to do that. And in addition to that, I think race quests would be a cool thing. Don't be like, that's racist. But I think it'd be cool if for your race you got to experience some lore knowledge. When you think about it, you think about when you first start your character, right? You start off in your starting zone, and you say you're Tarn. You start in Mulgore, you learn about the Mulgore, culture. You see quests with other Tauren, you learn about Tauren stuff, and then you're like, off into the world. I think it'd be cool if you got to learn more about that and more about your race and the lore of your race later in the game. And if you had, race-specific quests, I think that would be cool. And it would also encourage you making alts, because I know they're like, make alts and stuff. And then there'd be people being like, but then I can't access the race-specific quests because I don't want to make that race. Well, then you don't care about that. You probably don't care about that race anyway, so who cares? And if you really do, and you want, whatever. I just think it'd be fun to have race-specific quests to learn more about your race and lore and all that type of stuff. Also with PvE, I think there needs to be more gear types. Because, as a lot of people say, you need to make epics feel epic again. And, right now, everybody gets epics, like, they're easy to get. And that's been a problem for a while now. And I remember back when I played in Vanilla WoW, you'd see the people in epics, and you'd be like, whoa, that person has put a lot of time and effort into the game, and they got this epic gear. And it's become that thing where everybody wants the candy. And so they're like, okay, everybody gets the candy. And everyone's like, yeah, we got candy. And it doesn't make it feel special anymore. And there's very few things that you can get that make you feel special. Even the epic mounts. Epic riding mounts. Like, when you'd see someone with that, you'd be like, wow, that's kind of hard to get. And now it's just flooded. You want a mount, you got a mount. You want this, you got that. And I think they need to have a bit more. They need to make the word epic feel epic again, because it doesn't feel epic right now. You might as well change the epics to like commons or common, maybe rare. But I think they should add more gear tiers to do that. Maybe add make legendary. Still at the top, but add like some things between epic and legendary, like 2 or 3 new things, so that people can, maybe one for only the 25-man hardcore raider people, have it be like a yellow tier, and I'd be like, whoa, they have the really good gear because they're 25-man raider people. And that way, if you do LFR and you get just epics, you're like, well, I did that, but I don't have the yellow gear that's really cool for those people. You need something to reward the people putting a lot of time and effort into the game. And people be like, that's unfair, but it's too bad. And last for PvE, weather type zones. And I talked about this in my subscription thing as well. I think it'd be cool to have, in a new expansion, a zone that's kind of like Click Clock Wood in Banjo-Kazooie, where the seasons change, maybe every week. So it goes from like spring to summer to fall, winter, blah, blah, blah. And the quests change, the NPCs change, just all the things change. I did this in my Fans Ran WoW too, because I love the idea so much, and it would probably take a lot of design time, but I feel like it'd be worth it. I think it'd be worth it to have that type of zone that's just really dynamic. I think that's the good word, is that it's dynamic. It's constantly changing. The lake turns into a frozen lake in the winter, and people are, fighting on the lake or ice skating. Fighting or ice skating. Just the environment changes based on that, and that's what's so cool. And then you could have even dungeons that are only accessible per season. So maybe the spring version of the dungeon can change as well. When the season changes, and then the winter dungeon is different. So like, for example, say you went into, I don't know, what's a dungeon, Caverns of Time, right? You went into Caverns of Time, and let's say it was, that's a terrible example, hold on. Let me, dungeons, let's go to, Burning Outland, and, Hellfire Citadel, right? You're in Hellfire Citadel, and you wanna get. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm trying too much for examples. I'm just gonna make my own example of how I do it. So you go into a dungeon. It's summertime. You have a bunch of bosses, and it's like this. You know, there's trees everywhere. There's summer type mobs. Then it becomes winter, and you know the dungeon completely changes around it. It's like all snow. The trees are dead. There's different bosses in the dungeon because the seasons changed. There's different things to do in the dungeon because the seasons change. I think that would be really cool, and it would evolve the game a bit more, and people would be like, wow, you know, it would encourage people to play during certain times or log on, because you'd want to get on when the season's changing. People would be like, well, then I gotta wait for the season changes. Well, you gotta wait for Dark Moon Fair and holidays and other stuff too, and this would be changing pretty quickly, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just think it'd be fun. It'd be a fun thing. For dungeons and raiding, I don't want to. I mean, that's what I'd do for dungeons, and then raiding. Like I said, I'd make gear tiers feel more special for the hardcore raiding people. But I don't want to give too much effort or too much insight into those because I don't really raid or do dungeons currently. However, I think with dungeons, I used to do a lot during Wrath of the Lich King. I think a lot of it was because of the badge system and the way dungeons were back then, where it's kind of just like, I'm going to go do a dungeon and mindlessly grind it. Even though it's not what they intended, I did dungeons more back then. That's probably just a personal preference thing. I wanted to hop on and be like, hey, I'm mindlessly doing stuff and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's why I don't want to give my insight on those things, because I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable enough on those. However, some other PvE things, I think followers... I like followers and I don't like followers. Biggest problem with followers is it feels like, I talked about this with Noble, they're having more fun than you. It feels like the followers are having more fun than you because they're going out and doing the things, and you're just kind of like, go do it. All right, great. Like, it feels like it's just defeating the purpose of playing the game because your followers go do all the things while you stay in your garrison. Also, scenarios. Scenarios, I believe they removed from the game, but I think it'd be cool to use scenarios to replay and relive like nostalgic events or Warcraft 3 type lore things to carry it over to WoW, or learning about the lore gaps or those types of things. And then you obtain old gear or fun items and stuff like that for doing the scenarios. And I think the old scenario system just felt like a watered down dungeon, and that's why a lot of people didn't like it. That's why I didn't like it. It's like, yeah, it felt like a watered down dungeon. But I think you need to just create it in an immersive way, and by reliving nostalgic events or doing lore gaps and stuff like that, I think that'd make it a bit more fun. Also, you could even use them for I read this somewhere, like attunements. So like instead of going out and doing a bunch of dungeons and doing all the stupid attunement things, you could just create one attunement scenario and be like, hey, you got to do this before you raid or do the dungeon, and you learn a bit more about it, and you're like, oh, cool, you know? And it's just a quick little insight into the lore behind what you're about to do. I think that would be a good way to implement scenarios, but let's move on. Professions. I think professions really need to be overhauled. I think the materials need to be a bit harder to get, because right now they're in the garrison, and I've talked about this. They're just, you log on, you get your stuff, you log off. It's like, you need to... It's ironic because Blizzard wants you to go out into the world and farm herbs and farm, all these mats, but then they just put it in your garrison. And they remove flying to encourage people to go out into the world. Yet you don't really have to, because you just sit in your garrison and get all your things. And it's like, okay. It's like, we don't want people going out into the world and ganking each other, and we don't, we want to blah, 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 but then we're going to give you all the resources and ability to just sit in one place and not go out in the world. So that's why I don't get the no flying thing. I think the biggest thing with no flying is they want the zones to be smaller, so then they don't have to work as hard about just making the zone equipped for flying. But so I can understand that, but some of the other reasons I'm like, I don't know. And I think the big thing with professions is you need to make them all useful in some way. Like, for example, you have first aid, fishing, cooking, archaeology, you got tailoring, mining, skinning, leatherworking. I think they just need to focus just for a patch or so. Like, it doesn't even have to be an expansion, just a patch, and really overhauling professions and making them a bit more fun. You don't have to, like, I don't know, it's difficult because this is another one of those generic statements, like, they should overhaul professions, but then it's like, how are they going to do it? And I'm like, well, and I'm like, well, do the developers have that same thought? You know, are they like, we should really overhaul professions, and be like, how do we do it without, like, completely changing other aspects of the game? It's like, oh, you know, and that's kind of the problem with a lot of these things, is many of them are very generic. And so, like I said, it's fun to do these types of videos and talk about what I'd want to change and all things, but it's another whole thing to implement those ideas and changes. So I think they need to fix professions, because right now they feel dull. But I think one way to fix professions is by removing being able to gather stuff inside the garrison, and that also encourages world interaction by going out in the world and gathering resources. So I think that's an easy fix right there. Is just removing just the amount you gather. Maybe in the garrison you can gather like a couple herbs or a couple mineral things or whatever it is, but for the other stuff you actually have to go out into the world and compete for it. Another one I've talked about a lot is neutral cities. I love neutral cities. Shattrath, Dalaran. I think they're great. I love having all the factions together. Some people are like, doesn't make sense lore-wise, or blah blah. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I enjoy neutral cities. I think they're fun. I think they make the world feel more alive, and I like it far more than what we've had the last 2 or 3 expansions. Another big one is the old talent system, and the current talent system is just, let's look at it. You get 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 100, pretty much every 15 levels, and I don't like this. I haven't liked it since it came out. It's just, it feels so boring. It feels slow and it feels boring, and it doesn't feel like you're having as big of an impact as it used to be. So, for example, the old talent tree, it was just, even if you put 5% crit into something, like if you had to spend 5 levels being like 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% crit, yay, it still felt like you were building your character. You know, you were like, oh, I get a point to spend. There, I spent it. I did a thing to benefit myself. And that's the biggest issue I've had with the talent system, is they don't have that. You would level up, and you get nothing. You know, or you learn a new skill, and you're like, okay. But for the most part, you get nothing. And it just feels so stale. It feels just really stale and boring. And people, I think, enjoyed doing the cookie cutter type stuff and putting all those points in and redo it. It had this feel to it that made you it felt like you were improving your character, even if it was just little statistic points and stupid things like that. And I feel like they need to bring that back in some way. It doesn't have to be completely overhauled or changed, but and there's still some people that are like, I like this system, you know, I'm not gonna judge them or anything. That's what I preferred. I preferred the old system of stuff like that, which leads me to something I'm gonna get to a little bit later. Hold on, let's fly to a Ratchet and then go to the other zone. I think League of Legends actually is a good example of the talent system, how they've still had that talent system that old WoW used to have, yet I don't think anybody really complains about it too much. It's just like you have different builds, and they keep slightly tweaking it, and okay, we're gonna move on. So you get the point. I think more freedom in player housing. I've talked about this in subscription videos and stuff like that. Final Fantasy is a good example. They allow for a lot more of create your own fun. You know, you can decorate your guild house or whatever. You can chill there with your friends. It's just a lot of, like I said before, creating your own fun. And I talked about that a lot more in my sub-loss video, so I won't go too deep into it, but I think WoW needs a lot more of that. They need less like, go do this to have fun, and more like, hey, here's some stuff to let you create your own fun. So like, you know, you get cool furniture, maybe, you know, and when people think furniture, they think like, I don't want to put table and chairs in my place, but I mean, you think of like all the cool things you could do. Like maybe you go to, you know, Tanaris, where we are right now, and, you know, you help someone do something here, or find something, and you get a cool, like, this thing. You get a cool gate, like a mini gate of this axe chopping, and you can hang it on your wall, and you're like, whoa, you got the cool, like, axe chopping thing on your wall. Where'd you get that? And then someone's like, got it in Tanaris. Or like this blimp that floats around your house because you helped the guy with the blimp, and it's like, whoa, where'd you get the blimp that just floats around your house, dude? And it's like, got it in Tanaris. And then they go to Tanaris, and it encourages world activity, and it's like, wow, people are going out in the world again because you can get stuff and it's relevant. That's what I thought garrisons would be, and instead it kind of just discourages going out and doing things, and it's kind of like, either way, moving on. I've also talked about adding little things again, like getting arrows and using vanishing powder and stuff like that. I don't want it to be like, go get 8 billion things or whatever. I just think it'd be cool if you're like, you're a hunter, you gotta get arrows. I think it just adds a bit more, I don't know, depth to the game. Someone might say like, that's not depth, that's just, you know, meaningless, you know, cutting corners. Like, we don't need arrows, we'll get rid of arrows, whatever. But I feel like there's something to going and getting arrows and being like, hey, it makes sense that I need arrows to shoot arrows, because I don't know, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like it's the right thing. It's all, like I've mentioned survival games. I think when you're in a survival game and you're like, all right, I gotta go chop wood for a long time, or get this thing, or get that thing. Even though it feels like, oh, this is just dumb work and why do I have to do this? It still feels like, hey, you know, I need to do that in order to get the things I want. And I feel like those little things like arrows help you feel a bit more in tune with your character. Either way, let's move on. PvP. I don't know why in PvP, oh god, it's raining outside. If you hear like, it's rain outside. Winter Grasp. I think Winter Grasp was one of the best world PvP things they've done. Again, someone's be like, Winter Grasp is the worst thing I ever said in my life. Winter Grasp was far better than Tolbarad. I thought Tolbarad was just boring. I never wanted to do it. I was like, but I always liked Winter Grasp. I always enjoyed Winter Grasp. And I feel like one of the big things with Winter Grasp is it was fun, just like invading someone's fortress. You know, you'd capture the fortress, you'd be able to do the instance, the vaults, and be able to get the mount and do the, you know, you would capture it and then right away be like, hey, let's go do this dungeon in here, and everybody would be like, yeah, let's go do the dungeon in there. And it was easy enough where everybody could, you know, team together and be like it was almost like an LFR type thing. Maybe, yeah, and maybe even a little harder than LFR, but it was fun. And, you know, you had to siege the thing, and for the most part, everybody on offense would usually win, but there were times where the defense would win and be like, whoa, we won, you know, we held them off. And I really liked Winter Grasp. You got siege weapons. It felt like you were just invading a fortress for a good reason. You wanted to do the dungeon, you wanted to get stuff, you wanted access to those NPCs. Now, Tolbarad was just, I don't know what it was, it just seemed boring. I don't even remember anything about it, I was just bored. And Ashran is just kind of, it feels so clustery and just, I don't know what it is. It's like a big tug of war, you know? It just feels like a big tug of war with not a lot of things happening. And I feel like they need that kind of invade the base and get stuff again. I think that would be really cool. as like a world PvP zone, and I'm not sure why they did it. I feel like they did Tol Barad and were like, okay, that idea is dumb, and nobody likes it anymore. But I think it was just I think they Tol Barad kind of ruined that idea for them. I don't know, but I wish they brought back Wintergrass, because I thought it was a fun concept and a fun idea, and you know, oh no, don't leave me, boat. Don't leave me. Alright, we're good. Okay. I love to hear people's opinions on that too, because I don't know, I always like Wintergrasp, and then I don't know what it is, but they just stopped doing stuff like it. So that's probably one of the big things in the comments is, why do you think they stopped with that? Did you like Wintergrasp, etc.? Next, I think better rewards for going out and actually PvPing in the world would be cool. For example, you know, cool like buffs or items that drop that are like specific to that you'd see it and be like, whoa, how'd you get that? And be like, I went out and PvP'd in the world. Be like, whoa, I want that. And then you gotta go do it. But the biggest problem with all these things is faction balance. And there always seems to be one faction that's bigger than the other, and because of that, it imbalances all the PvP stuff. And it happened in, you know, Wintergrasp and things like that, but then they queued it, or capped it, so only certain people could get in, but then at the same time you're like, what? But now they have cross-realm things, so it shouldn't be as big of an issue, even though there'd still probably be somewhat of an imbalance. But I think they're a lot better equipped for dealing with the imbalances now, and it's just my opinion on balancing. You're never gonna fix the balancing. It's always gonna be, you know, somewhat imbalanced, however it may be. But that leads me to PvP's balance, and I think instead of pruning abilities and getting rid of abilities like they're doing, I think it'd be cool to diversify between PvP and PvE. And I think there's been traces of this throughout the Warcraft's history, but I think the biggest thing would be giving PvE people abilities that are specific to PvE, the same way you give gear specific to PvE and PvP, and then abilities for PvP. So if you were to do this, you could even have the talent trees, bring the talent trees back, and you have a PvE talent tree and a PvP talent tree, and your PvP and PvP one would be separate, so you'd have two separate talent trees for both that you could spend points in and get points for. And it'd be a lot easier to balance it that way, because you would create these specific abilities for each thing, instead of being like, well, if we nerf this ability, it's going to hurt its PvE qualities. And it's like, why not just make separate abilities? You know, it seems obvious. I don't know if there's a reason for it. Maybe it's, and again, I don't know, it's a generic thing I thought of, but I'm like, why wouldn't you just do that? I think it'd be cool too, because then you'd have just more new abilities coming out that would be, I think part of that reason is they're like, well, then you gotta learn a whole new set of abilities, and you got way too many abilities for whatever. But if you were to separate it and have it so you could switch between the two, I don't think that's a big problem. I think people are very capable of learning a lot of abilities, especially if it's separated into two categories. And I think it makes it easier to balance. So I don't know why they've never tried that, and I think it'd be cool to actually see that happen and have it implemented. And I'm sure it's in some other games. I don't know which ones, but I mean, somebody say in the comments if another game has that, because I'd love to see how that was actually doing in games. Class versus class arenas and battlegrounds are the final thing I think would be cool. I talked about that in my Fans Ran WoW, and after I wrote that, I was like, that wouldn't be a bad idea, you know? You wouldn't have to worry about the class imbalance. It'd be like 3 hunters versus 3 hunters, or, you know, 1v1s, like mage versus mage. I think it'd be fun to watch, and you'd be like, hey, it's gonna be balanced, because, you know, the class is at least, you know, balanced I don't know, the classes would at least be balanced, so that's cool. And for the most part, that's what I wrote. But I wrote a few more, kind of just wrap up things, and I felt these were the biggest ones, even though they're kind of generic. And the biggest one overall is just getting people to work together, especially working with your friends. Because right now, you know, you'll log into your garrison, it's do the Facebook dailies and be done with it. Or, you know, go raiding or PvP. But I mean, there's nothing to be like, hey, friends and people, let's go do these things out in the world and have, you know, socializing fun. It's just, you know, there's just like raids or maybe doing battlegrounds together. But it's like, that's what's happened for so long. It's like we have the ability to do so much more now. And I don't know why it's not happening. Which is why I think it'd be cool to have, you know, fun, unique group quest dailies even. Where, like, maybe you go out and, like, for example, I know in the Barrens there's a quest where you had a Kodo, and you were escorting the Kodo and the group with a shotgun, and you were like, boom, get out of here, and they'd, like, jump onto the Kodo, and you have to, like, shoot them off, and it was like, whoa. It'd be cool if, like, you had the gun, and your friend was driving the Kodo, and, you know, that was, like, a daily quest. Be like, whoa, we gotta go do the Kodo daily, and you're like, oh, yeah, let's go do it. And it's like, whoa. And maybe like those progress, and then you gotta, you know, fly a griffin and do the same thing but in the air. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of ways you can make fun, unique group quest dailies, not just like do it yourself dailies, and not just like go gather 10 apple daily. I think World PvP, like Winter Grasp, should be brought back and focused a bit more on, especially since they were like, go out into the world, and then nobody's going out into the world. But I mean, people have been complaining about World PvP for so long, and they've tried fixing it so many ways. For example, I know they did back in Vanilla WoW, they made the towers in Eastern Plaguelands and then the sand in Silithus. I know everybody, if you're an old player, you're gonna know about the sand. It's like, I got a jar of dirt, or the Johnny Depp thing. But yeah, it seems like they've been trying to fix World PvP for so long, but I feel like there has to be something, right? There has to be something that it can do that isn't just like go fight over sand and towers. I think they're not putting enough. I don't know. It's another generic thing. I don't want to go too deep into it because it's another like generic thing. Like, just fix it. I don't like that. And like I said before, just player housing type guild garrisons, because then you're at least like inviting people over and you're having a good time. You're, you know, interacting with other people, which is what an MMO RPG should be. Is you know, your massively multiplayer online experience should be with other people, right? Right. But in the end, wrapping this all up, I've talked for a long time. You're never going to be able to please the community. You have too many people. It's too diverse with too many opinions, and you know, I think it's in a state right now where if you try to please everyone, you're not going to please everyone. You just need to focus on what you think is best and what they think is best as game developers, and do that. And you know, a lot of people want to go back to the olden times, but you're not going to relive that nostalgia. However, if you wanted to add cool little nostalgia quests, like I said earlier, okay, I'm done. Leave your comments below. These are just all the ideas I thought up in a little bit of, you know, thinking about stuff and the way the game is right now. Leave your ideas, leave your comments, and thanks for listening. Okay? Okay. See you.